You look at a person and believe you see their character, their intentions, their personality, their conscious self. Carl Jung revealed this as an illusion. What you see is often just the persona, the social mask, while the true governing forces remain hidden in darkness. This is Jung's central warning: the unconscious governs consciousness, and when a person is alienated from their own unconscious, that unconscious content seeks expression elsewhere. It seeks you. What follows is a decoding of 6 human forms, 6 living manifestations of unintegrated archetypes, 6 profiles where the psyche's autonomy has been lost, and the collective unconscious speaks through an individual, often with destructive consequences. This is not psychology as you know it. This is Jungian depth psychology as a survival manual, a map of the hidden dangers in the relational field. The first profile: the possessed by the shadow. Jung defined the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. This person does not confront their shadow, they project it. You become the living screen for everything they deny in themselves. Their hidden aggression becomes your conflict. Their repressed desires become your temptation. Their unacknowledged weaknesses become your failures. You are not in a relationship, you are in someone else's projection field, carrying the weight of their disowned self. Jung called this psychic infection. The second profile: the identified with a persona. For Jung, the persona is necessary but becomes a prison when identification occurs. This person is not wearing a mask, they have become the mask. The ego has fused completely with the social role. The manager, the caregiver, the perfect partner, no trace of the true self remains accessible. They will shape you into a supporting character in their performance. Your authenticity threatens the entire theatrical production, for it reminds them of the authentic existence they have buried. Jung warned this leads to psychic atrophy, a slow death of the soul behind the perfect facade. The third profile: the repressor of the shadow complex. Here, the shadow is not projected but violently repressed. Jung spoke of complexes, autonomous psychic fragments charged with emotion. This person has created a complex of control, banishing all chaos, emotion, and spontaneity into the unconscious. You live on the fault line of this war. Their repressed rage becomes sudden outbursts. Their denied needs become passive aggression. Their unlived life becomes resentment toward your vitality. Jung said what is repressed returns in distorted form. You experience the distortion firsthand. If this video resonated with you, please let me know your thoughts in the comments and consider subscribing to the channel. The fourth profile: the inflated with moral superiority. This is a corruption of the Senex archetype, the wise old man inflated by righteousness. They mistake judgment for wisdom. Their moral complex is a weapon. They use Jung's concept of individuation against you, not as a path to wholeness, but as a measure of your failure. They speak of ethics, but practice psychic coercion. They quote ideals, but enforce conformity. Jung warned of inflation when an archetype possesses the ego. This person is possessed by the judge, the critic, the moral authority, and you are perpetually on trial in their internal court, a court where the verdict is always guilty. The fifth profile: the haunted by autonomous complexes. Jung's groundbreaking work on complexes explained this profile. Traumatic experiences form autonomous psychic entities. These complexes act like split-off personalities. They have us, as Jung said. This person is not one but many: the loving partner one moment, the abandoned child the next, the vengeful spirit. After a trigger, you do not relate to a person. You relate to a psychic constellation, a system of wounds orbiting a fragmented core. Jungian therapy aims for integration of complexes, but here the complexes remain the rulers. You are drafted into their endless internal conflicts. The sixth profile: the enmeshed in psychic symbiosis. This violates Jung's core principle of individuation, the sacred process of becoming a separate whole self. This person seeks not relationship, but psychic fusion. They operate from a primordial anxiety of separation. Their unconscious goal is to erase boundaries. You become their psychic substrate, the ground for their being. Your energy, your thoughts, your time become shared resources. Jung called this participation mystique, a primitive unconscious merging. It feels like love, but is actually psychic hunger. The hunger of a self that never learned to exist autonomously. The Jungian diagnosis. These 6 profiles are not mere personality types, they are clinical pictures of failed individuation. Each represents a specific failure in the relationship between consciousness and the unconscious, between the ego and the self. The shadow projector suffers from projective identification, the persona prisoner from ego inflation. The repressor from complex possession, the moral inflated from archetypal possession. The haunted from autonomous complex dominance, the enmeshed from failed separation individuation. Jung's entire work was a map out of these states, a guide from unconsciousness to consciousness, from possession to autonomy, from projection to responsibility. The prescription, active imagination, and shadow work. Jung's method was not avoidance, but confrontation. Active imagination, dialoguing with the unconscious. Shadow work integrating the disowned self-dream analysis, decoding the nightly messages from the psyche. Your protection lies not in fleeing these people, but in doing the work they refuse. When you integrate your own shadow, you stop attracting their projections. When you differentiate from your persona, you stop being seduced by their masks. When you make the unconscious conscious within yourself, you become immune to their unconscious manipulations. This is Jung's ultimate defense. A robust, individualed psyche is impervious to psychic invasion. The call to individuation. If you recognize these profiles, you are already on the individuation path. Awareness is the first and most crucial step. Jung's legacy is not just theory. It is a praxis of liberation, a set of tools to reclaim your psychic sovereignty, to build ego self-alignment. To live from the center, not the periphery of your being. The dangerous people are your teachers. They show you where the work remains. They mirror the unintegrated aspects of the human condition. Your task is not to change them, but to use the reflection to change yourself. The next step. From diagnosis to practice. Recognizing the patterns is the map, but you need the vehicle, the tools, the fuel. How do you actually withdraw projections? How do you engage in active imagination? How do you interpret dreams as Jung taught? How do you build conscious relationships instead of archetypal entanglements? This is the practical core of Jungian psychology, the transformation from theory to lived experience. From understanding to embodiment. Which Jungian profile did you recognize most, the shadow projector or the one identified with the persona? Name the archetype in the comments. This act of naming is the beginning of consciousness, which Jung called the only true antidote. Your journey into depth psychology has just begun to move from recognizing these patterns to actively working with them. Through Jungian methods, you need the proper tools. Subscribe to this channel. Your dedicated portal to Jungian insights. Hit the bell so you do not miss our next deep dive, where we break down Jung's own techniques, active imagination, dream analysis, and shadow integration. We translate his clinical genius into practical steps you can use to fortify your psyche. The path of individuation is not a solo journey. Let this community be your circumambulation, a sacred circle of shared seeking. Share your insight below. Let us continue this vital exploration together.